Hello everyone. When out in the woods, sharp tools like knives and axes are a very important thing to have. Knives are very important in the woods because a lot of times you're going to come into situations where you need to cut something, whether it's removing a vine, cutting your food, cutting rope, that sort of thing. It's always a good idea to have a knife on you. Because of their importance, today I'm going to talk about several different types of sharp tools that you can carry with you in the wilderness and talk about their pros and cons. So let's start with the pocket knife. Now, these things are designed to be portable. That's really their main design attribute. A lot of people carry these camping, they just carry them day to day, and they're great. They're a great option for someone who doesn't want to carry anything bulky like these. However, they're kind of sucky knives, and I don't say that with any malice or, desire to be a contrarian. Like, if you are comfortable with a pocket knife, more power to you. But these oftentimes sacrifice a lot of useful characteristics as a tool for their portability. The main thing you'll notice with a lot of pocket knives is that the blade is shorter than the handle. In fact, the blade cannot be longer than the handle, otherwise how is it going to fold back in? This presents a problem. If you're trying to chop with this, such as maybe if you needed to cut down a tree for a shelter in a survival situation, that's difficult. You can see it has like saw teeth here, but sawing down a tree isn't much better. You really want to be able to hack with it, and if you want to do that with this kind of knife, you got to hold it at the back here, and it's just uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of hand shock, and it's just not what you want in that sort of scenario. Now, if you want a good knife to carry in the event that you are in a survival situation, I would say one of these 6-inch fixed blades. Now, what's good about these is that they are basically these type of knives, but without the sacrifices made for portability. For example, you'll notice on this knife, the handle is shorter than the blade. That means you can hack with it, not very well, but you can hack with it while still maintaining a very firm grip on the handle, which is a very good idea if you're going to be hacking at something that's going to resist. You don't want it bouncing off and out of your hand like it might with this. That could be potentially dangerous. And the last thing you want in a survival situation is to injure yourself. And another thing that's good with this is that it has a very, very lethal point. So if you actually needed to defend yourself against a wild animal, this thing would actually be better than all of the other things on the table combined because it has a very sharp thrusting point. These are good. This one not so much, but I'll take thrusting as a way to incapacitate something that's trying to harm me over hitting something with an edge, because it's just way more effective. Maybe I'll make a video on that in a bit, but this is a much better self-defense implement. However, when people are camping, unless they're hunting as well, oftentimes they don't carry heavy knives like this because there's no need. You're not skinning deer, you're not doing anything where you likely need to defend yourself against a wild animal, so why are you going to carry a big knife like this? However, a lot of people do carry large hatchets, and that's a very big thing. If you were camping and you were carrying a hatchet with you, whether it was small, large, that's going to become a very important survival implement. Now, let's pick this one up right here. They're not very useful as a knife. They're kind of unwieldy, actually. In fact, the point of balance is like way up here. But for a lot of survival practices, you're going to need something that's this hefty. Chopping down a small tree to make a shelter, this is going to be a very, very good option. If you find a wild animal, chances are you're actually not going to be able to kill a live deer or something out in the woods. You just don't have the tools for it if you're just lost in the woods. However, and apologies if this sounds a little gross, but if you find a dead deer, roadkill, or something like that, obviously you don't want to eat the meat unless you're really starving, you don't have any other option. But what this can do, as well as this to some degree and this as well, is crack the bones for the marrow. Now that's actually how early humans survived. That was one of their main survival strategies. They would find dead animals and crack the bones for the marrow. And in a survival situation, that's a very good option, to be able to crack the bones and then get that nutrient-rich marrow to keep you going. So this is a very good option. And it's probably the one that most people are going to have if they ever get lost. However, none of these are my favorite. This is, in my opinion, not a very good knife. This does not hack all that well. It's not as hefty as I'd like it to be for a lot of the purposes that survival requires of it. And this is too hefty. This is like unwieldy to the maximum. And it's not a very good knife, so I need this and a combination anyway. But I could always just grab this. This machete is my favorite survival tool. So machetes like this have gotten a bad rep. I mean, films like Friday the 13th, these things are seen as basically a murder weapon, when they're really not. These are a very valuable tool out in the woods. Now, this machete design and make and model are tried and true. This thing is older than I am. Now, as far as I know, the maker of this knife actually still makes this exact same make and model. So if I wanted to get another one, or if this one had ever broken, I could easily replace it and basically just keep on going with the exact same tool, which is ideal for something this useful. One of the things that makes this such a valuable tool is that while it's not portable, it is a very good all-in-one tool. It has an unsharpened tip right here, which is basically like a wedge. Now, I'm going to demonstrate how unsharp this is by pressing on it and running my fingers across it. It's not sharp at all. It's more for splitting wood, whether that's splitting wood to use for a shelter or to use as firewood. That's the purpose. And it's not quite as good as this axe would be, but it's serviceable. And of course, the sharpened blade edge. It's from about here to around about here. Doesn't actually start to get sharp until around here. And it is sharp. I do sharpen this regularly, as you should with all your tools. And this is, of course, the main functional part of this machete. The blade edge is the part that's going to be the most used for most purposes, cutting through brush, cutting down live trees to use for shelter, cracking open bones for marrow, and a lot of other things that it'd be too long to list here. But this is sort of like the main working edge of this tool. That said, those two are not the only functional parts of this machete. I also sometimes like to turn it around and use the back edge. That's a bit controversial. Some people would say that's a little dangerous. I've actually never injured myself with this blade since I've had it, and I've had it for several years. I've had these for a lot shorter of a time, and all of these have cut me or injured me in one way or another, but this one has not hurt me ever. So I guess that's an interesting tidbit. But yeah, I do flip this over occasionally and use the backside of the blade. Using the backside of the blade is very advantageous when you're cutting through something hard and you don't necessarily want to cut it, you just want to break it. For instance, dead brush, I'll often flip to the backside because it doesn't matter whether I'm cutting it with this or this side, because it's just going to break anyway. And when you're cutting through hard, dead brush, it's going to really dull this blade a lot quicker. So a lot of times I'll flip to this side. And the task gets done just as easily, but I don't have to sharpen this as often. And last, and also least important, is this tip right here. Now, this isn't a sharp tip by any means, but it is a tip. And with how hefty this is, you can use this as almost like a makeshift pick if you had to. Of course, this isn't perfect. There are pros and cons to all of these tools. It's certainly not as portable as the pocket knife. It's not as good if you needed to defend yourself against a wild animal as this knife would be. And it's not as hefty and as good at chopping and splitting as this axe is, but it's a very good all-arounder. However, it should be said that the machete might actually be better in a wildlife encounter that could be potentially dangerous versus actually a fighting for your life scenario. In a fighting for your life scenario, yes, this is better because it can stab and stabs are more lethal, but this is a far more intimidating weapon. And if you hold this high above your head and start waving it around, a bear is less likely to attack you. And that's the best option, where you intimidate the animal and you both back away. And in this way, the machete might actually come out on top. But I digress. At any rate, all of these tools are better than nothing in a survival situation. Even the pocket knife, as much as I'll sort of chide it for not being a very good knife and being more of just a portability and convenience than anything substantial, it's, again, still better than nothing. And I don't expect people to carry around a machete everywhere they go. Well, I hope you all learned something. See ya.